Good. This is class 2, study 9, loving your wife. I want to pick up where I left off last week. Alex, you and Rachel, I know that you weren't here for this, but I've got the notes in the notebook, and probably tomorrow or the next day the video will be posted and I can send it to you so that you can watch it. I'd rather you watch it first and then you can read the notes. But what we're doing is that we're talking about the basic stress points that happen in marriage, and we went over 4 or 5 of those. We had 5 of them, 6 actually, and now we're talking about qualitative differences that exist. And we're on qualitative difference number 4. So you'll be a little bit behind. It may not make as much sense to you since you missed last week, but I want you to appreciate that all of this information, this upfront information that I'm giving you, that probably take me 3 or 4 weeks to get through, are my notes from years of doing marriage counseling, and what I believe are really critical information of how to help young couples that are getting married, and then some that are already married and their marriage is in great distress. I want to re-emphasize to you again before I start this, that you will find, anybody that's ever done it, you will find that marriage counseling is the most draining aspect of the ministry. Doing premarital counseling is fun, but when you have a married a couple that's been married, they've got children, you cannot imagine how draining that is on you personally, because you want your counseling to work. The problem that those couples have a lot of times is that they're sort of like the guy that enters into the ministry, doesn't know what it's about, and they've entered into marriage and don't have much of a clue how to work through the problems that every marriage is going to provide. I think every one of us in this room, if we were honest and we wanted to talk about our marriages out loud, we could. I don't want us to, but we could share about the problems that we had in the marriage process as we learn to grow together and to become one and all that kind of stuff. After 51 years of being married to my incredible, amazing wife, I know everything about her that I know more about her than everybody else put together. I don't want to change anything. I'm just completely satisfied with her the way she is. She doesn't have to change a thing for me. She can cut her hair if she wants to. She can, she can wear whatever clothes that she wants. There's nothing about her. I love her cooking. She's she's a chauffeur. She's my caregiver. There's nothing about her that I want to change at all. And I'm settled on that. And she knows that I'm settled on that. So I want to talk about qualitative difference number 4. I'll read the previous 3. Men and women differ in how they see the world and their role in it. Men and women differ in how they talk and how they communicate. That's a big one. Men and women differ in their understanding of their sexuality. And then qualitative difference number 4 is that men and women differ in the way that they handle stress. To me, this is huge. This is huge. Men just need to be alone. I don't know if men, if you're a guy and you're under a lot of stress, sometimes you just want to be alone. You just want to go work it out. Women, on the other hand, will do what they have to do to share their feelings, whether their husband will listen or not. The wife wants to share her feelings. They're deep. They run deep. Their emotions run deep. the husband may not want to even listen. He may want to just go somewhere, be alone. Women care intensely about their feelings. They want their husband to understand how they feel, how they care about something. I think a lot of times the women are more engaged with the family as a whole, as a unit, and the husband is. Not that the husband doesn't care, but mothers just have a different perspective on the family, I think, and both of these can lead to an argument. If the husband is not willing to listen to his wife when there's some stress in the family, maybe the finances are not going well, maybe the children are not behaving well, maybe the church life is not going well, maybe the job is not going well, whatever it may be, everybody's going to handle that differently, but you can be assured that the husbands and the wives are going to handle those differently. When my wife and I got married, we were exact opposites in almost every area of our life. Opposites attract. There's something to that. But we've grown. I've got a little diagram a little triangular diagram I'll draw you that really has meant a lot to me, because the closer you get to God, the closer you get to one another. And I think the closer you get to one another, the more you become alike. Even though we are different in a lot of different areas, we're still unified in our differences. The differences don't separate us. They don't hurt us. They complement. My differences complement her differences complement me. And that's the way that it should be. I think what frustrates wives is that husbands seldom, if ever, explain what they're doing or why. They just go out and do something to make a decision. Off they go. Women, y'all can shake your head and y'all can comment if you want to tonight. We were talking about the needs of a husband, but the needs of a wife are much longer than the needs of a husband. So they just go off. They just disappear. They just walk out. They disappear. They've gone somewhere. They're doing something. They're down at the barn. Men get alone to find solutions to their problems. They tend to sort things out, think things over. For a woman, that is so frustrating. Not to think about something, but what's frustrating about it is that she wants to talk about it. She wants to communicate about it. She wants there to be dialogue and discussion about the problem and how to resolve it. My wife, I know what really frustrates her, probably more than anything else, is that something will come in the mail, and I'll be in my study, and she'll bring a letter in there that wants me to sign something or look at something or do something about taxes, and she wants me to look at it, and she'll just put it there, and I'll just kind of move it off to the side, that I don't want to talk about it now. It's just not the timing. It's kind of wrong. Cindy, you think that's happened to you?
Last Sunday.
Last Sunday. So,
I feel you, brother.
Brenda feels your hurt there. So, we're a little bit different there, but I'm not ignoring my wife. I'm just different, and differences aren't bad. Differences are actually good. Few men ever understand their wives. Once they get married, understanding their wife is no longer important to them. It's not as important as it was before they got married, which is really a sad testimony to why people get married. Women need a time, they need a place. Everybody listen to me, guys, to allow their feelings to ebb and flow. You understand why, right? They have menstrual cycles. And there's an ebb and flow to their life. My daughter used to have very, very strong cycles, and there were times that were very difficult for her. My wife never really had those kind of moments. She's always been, she's more like that, or was like that, and we're old people now. So, but you can get married, you can have a young couple and you get married, and the guy knows nothing about this on a monthly basis. Nothing. He doesn't have a clue what's going on when his wife doesn't feel good and she's argumentative and she's short and her emotions are just running at an all-time high. And he said, "Oh, you didn't do this when we were dating," and all that kind of stuff. And then they get pregnant and that makes it worse. And they got all kind of hormones just going off in their body. And so the woman needs time for these emotions to kind of subside and to flow. And you have to be a little careful where you enter into the argument, right? You've got to be a little bit careful where you begin to start to have a discussion about something that's going to be a little bit tense.
There's times for yes, dear, and keep going.
That's right. That's right. It's a real good time for that. Because when you give them the time to ebb and flow, it renews them. It renews them emotionally. It's all part of being a woman, and most men just foul this rhythm up in their wives' lives. Just don't even really care about it. They try to fix the cascading part of that woman's life by just going out and fixing the problem, and that's not what the wife wants. That's not what she wants. There's no communication there. There's nothing emotional there. And she thrives on that a lot more than you do. And so the wives begin to feel unsafe to share their deepest feelings. Listen, that's the last thing that you want to happen, is that your wife cannot share her deepest feelings with you. And if you shut her down every time that she cascades, and every time she ebbs and flows, and every time that life is a little bit challenging, more challenging for her than it is for you at that time of the month, then that's trouble. That's trouble, just around the corner. That's a great, but I think very common tragedy in marriages. Husbands, they need to train themselves to just simply listen. All the women in the class are supposed to, at this point, to say amen. You know, just to listen to what your wife has to say, to accept and to understand your wife for the way that God has made her, which is very different than the way that you are. We talked about a lot of those differences last week, what those differences were. And when you do, your wife can ascend and descend emotionally without being threatened. They cycle every month. Women cycle every month. If men would just simply love, accept and understand this and let it happen and not be a hindrance to it, marriages would be a lot better off. It's just that time of the month, right? And you think, well, why didn't we talk about this in a seminary class? Because this is life. This is life in the ministry, especially if you have a lot of tension and struggles that are going on in the ministry at any one time. And so if you just love and accept and understand this, it would validate your wives in their eyes. And so she needs to come to you during those times where she has a place. She can share those deepest feelings with you when she's not feeling well, or her emotions. Listen, I'm on all these treatments. And one of the things that they do is that they mess with my hormones. I mean, they just really interact with my hormones. They're built to destroy my hormones. They're built to destroy my manly hormones, my testosterone. But the doctors want to kill every bit of testosterone that I have. That gives me physical strength, physical energy. It allows too much estrogen to build up in my body. There's some days, my wife can tell you, where I just want to go somewhere and cry. I just emotionally, it's not that I'm mad at anybody or anything. It's just that something inside of me is just hurting. It's not working right, you know. And I almost appreciate that I've had to experience this, because I can appreciate what a woman goes through when her hormones kind of get out of whack, and what it does to her and how she feels during those times. And so she needs that shelter, and she wants you to be that shelter for her. She wants it to be a protected place where she doesn't feel threatened. All right, that ends the qualitative differences. I want to talk now, I want to do the needs of the husband first. I don't know if I'll get to the needs of the wife until next week, but we'll see. These are the probably two longest sections in this part about the marriage counseling. So I'm kind of talking to the wives here, right? Not intentionally, but if I'm doing marriage counseling. But if you're doing marriage counseling, you got to talk to both, right? You got to talk to both. Now listen to me again. Marriage counseling is the most difficult thing that you will do. It will emotionally drain you. You cannot just pass it off to somebody else. It will drain you emotionally. It will drain you physically. Because you have to speak to both. You have to speak. You have to be discerning. There's just so much that goes on in a private marriage counseling session that is mind-boggling to me. My wife counsels me when I'm with a woman, and you never counsel with a woman alone. So. And the reason is because, there are a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons is because during counseling times, you hear secrets that nobody else knows. People telling you things that they're not telling anybody else. They don't want anybody else to know, and they'll tell you intimate details about their life and their struggles. And those kind of details are what emotionally draw people to each other. That's exactly what happens. You can get drawn to another person because they're sharing the details of their life in an emotional way. I don't want to ever be in that situation without my wife. I don't care if the guy shares with me, but I don't want a woman sharing those kind of feelings without my wife there. All right, need number one. This is for you wives that are in the room here. A husband needs a wife who respects him as a man. This seems like a no-brainer. I don't think it is. Just go read Proverbs and you'll find out a lot about the husband-wife relationship, and a wife that contends with her husband all the time. A husband needs his wife's admiration. He needs her respect. I will say this to you in no uncertain terms, that the one question that will come up to you in a counseling session, if you're counseling a husband and a wife, is that, whether it's either side, is that the wife probably is going to tell you, well, I can't respect him because he's not doing respectable things. Well, one of the reasons that may be the case is because you haven't respected him in the past. You haven't honored him in the way. Though the Bible never really tells the directly tells the wife to love her husband in the same way that it tells the husband to love his wife, but it does tell her to honor him, which means to respect him and to reverence him. And in our culture, those are bad words. Those are politically incorrect in the culture in which we live today. But obviously, admiration and respect are attributes that have to be earned by the husband, and that's what the wife is going to tell you. Well, he hasn't earned it. Once you go to Ephesians chapter 5, I want to read this out of the Amplified Bible. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. And what I want to do is I want to read it out of the New King James first, just so you can see how different the Amplified reads it. In the New King James, it says, "Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband." When you get to the Amplified Bible, now the women are not going to like the way that this reads. It seems like the translators lean more toward telling the wife what to do than telling the husband what to do. But it says, "However, let each man of you, without exception, love his wife as being in a sense his very own self, and let the wife see that she respects and reverences her husband, that she notices him, regards him, honors him, prefers him, venerates and esteems him, and that she defers to him, praises him, and loves and admires him exceedingly." Now that wouldn't go over well in a lot of churches if I read that out of the Amplified Bible. It just wouldn't go over well. Well, why didn't you say that about the husband? He's supposed to do the same thing. Well, we're going to spend the majority of this semester talking about the husband. All right, we'll get around to him as we go through this. And the Bible tells him to do even more. And we'll figure that out, and so that you can know what all that means for you, especially in ministry. So in our culture, especially in the American culture, there are many women that actually react almost violently to those kind of words, to those kind of ideas. Feminism is on the rise. I'm not against women. Please don't take it that way at all. I'm not a male chauvinist. I think I think the ideal is that a husband love his wife like Christ loved the church, and when he does that and honors his wife and venerates her and does all these things and notices her and prefers her and esteems her and defers to her and praises her and all those kind of things that are written about the wife doing the same, that at that point you have one of the greatest examples of what real love actually is. And it takes both working at this. But sincere admiration is a tremendous motivator for most men. That's what the women need to appreciate. Is that I love when my wife compliments me, my wife is not a very good critic of me in teaching, whether it's at church or here. I might ask her, I said, "How do you think that went?" She said, "Oh, I think that went great."
No constructive criticism.
The only thing that she's going to tell me is that the auditorium was too hot or you went too long. But she's not going to really say much about the content of the message. And I'm okay with that. And just to know that his wife thinks that he is amazing, that he's capable, and he's doing a great job, and that he can, that as a husband, that can motivate the husband more than anything else, that he knows that he is just doing a great job.
Affirmation.
That affirmation is exactly what it is. That's the right word, actually. And it'd do far more than what he would do if the wife disapproved of him or did not admire him. He wants to feel like a man. So I want to give you several ways that you can help him to feel his manliness. I think this is important. A wife destroys her husband's manliness by expecting him to know what protection she needs. She doesn't want you to ask her, well, what do you need me to do for you? She wants him to know what to do for him, for her. But we're talking about physical needs, spiritual needs, mental needs, intellectual needs, and emotional needs. I don't always know what my wife wants. And if her expectation is that I have to know what she wants all the time, I'm not saying after 51 years I think I generally know what she wants. But if in a young marriage, if that's the case, then if she's always saying, well, you should have known what to do or what my expectations were, it will destroy, I'll call it his manliness. As a part of this, she needs to share those areas of her life in which she knows she needs her husband's protection, needs his help. If your wife is hurting in a certain area, if she's struggling in a certain area, the best thing that the wife can do is to share those feelings with her husband. Say, I'm really struggling in this area. Maybe she has a conflict with somebody in the church, somebody that she just doesn't get along with very well, somebody that just they just don't connect very well. We were talking on the way to church tonight about a woman that both of us know, that they don't go to our church, they go to another church, but I told my wife, I said, every time that I'm around that woman, I just feel awkward. I mean, I just feel like she's very aloof. I don't know what to expect from her, and I asked my wife, I said, do you feel the same way? And she said, yeah, I kind of feel the same way myself, and we talked about it for a little bit. But I want my wife to identify for me those areas of need or weakness or temptation without expecting me to understand what they are. I want to know how let me say it in a different way. I want to know how I can protect my wife. That's what I want. That's what I'm really trying to say. I want to know how I can protect her, and sometimes I don't know what that is unless she tells me what that is. So it wouldn't hurt you men to ask your wife sometime, are there any areas of your life that I'm just not seeing? I got blind spots. I don't know how to help you. Other things that you really need for me to do for you that I'm not doing. Please tell me before that escalates and you become overly frustrated and irritated with me, because I love you. I'm not trying to frustrate you or irritate you. Number 2, a wife destroys her husband's manliness by being financially independent. Now, I can tell you that I have done marriage counseling before, even not done marriage counseling before, and talked about this, and just got raked over the coals. Just raked over the coals by a woman that worked and her husband worked, and they both had separate checking accounts. I know one couple, the husband, that he paid for these bills out of his account, and the wife paid for these bills out of her account. He paid for his truck, she paid for her car, he paid for the electricity, she paid for the food, he paid for the yard maintenance, she paid for the kids' clothes, blah, 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 blah. And then what was left over, they went and spent it however they wanted to spend it. That's dangerous. to be financially independent of one another. That's the worst thing that I think could happen in a marriage, is for a husband and wife to be financially independent. My wife and I, we don't ever make financial decisions without each other's, without just complete unity about it. My wife manages the finances, all right, but she's not independent of those finances. I would prefer that she do it. She does a great job. She has that sort of gifting, and she just knows all the time where we are financially and what we can do and what we can't do. And she'll come say, we need to cut back or something like that, and we will. And I think love in a marriage is very often killed by being independent and self-sufficient. And when you have two different checking accounts, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your marriage. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm telling you, I will get in many churches, if I was teaching this as a course or something in a church, I would get all kinds of criticism. I'd get all kinds of criticisms for this. Well, so be it. What I'm trying to do is to prevent you from becoming independent. Rather, what you want to do is to be completely dependent on one another, not completely independent on one another. And it generally happens financially, especially when a husband works and a wife works, and they don't talk about, they just separate their lives. I don't want to be separated. I want to be one with my wife, and financially is one of those things. You know, you've always heard it said that whoever controls the money controls the leadership. And so you have to be really, really careful when it comes to being financially independent. Number 3, a wife destroys her husband's manliness by greater loyalty to outside leadership. Now, this is something that is really, really a really serious issue to me. I think I can say this. My wife is here. She wouldn't mind me saying this. I do not want my wife to go to other men to get spiritual insight. I'm her husband. I want her to come to me if she needs help in an area, if she has questions. I don't want to be going to other women to get information about life, you know. I want my wife to come to me. I'm her protector. I want to be her teacher. I want to be the one that she depends on. I depend on my wife is literally my physical caregiver. I have pulmonary fibrosis. I have stage 4 cancer. She's my caregiver. She's my physical caregiver with a company. They pay her to take care of me, if that makes sense. And nobody could take better care of me than my wife does. Nobody. There's nobody on the planet that could take better care of me than she does. But I don't want her to be loyal to have greater loyalty to outside leadership. And okay, men, this happens to you. You have to be very careful when women in your church keep coming to you and they keep bypassing their husband. You've got to deflect that away. You've got to deflect that back to their husband. You've got to say something like, what you need to do before, maybe we can all get together, but what you need to do is that you need to ask your husband how he feels about that. Rather, I don't want to answer that question. I don't want to usurp his role in your family. I don't want to become your spiritual leader. There are a lot of pastors that kind of welcome that, you know, like, wow, this is really cool. I think that's really dangerous. If a woman is going to other men to get the spiritual leadership that they need in their family. I can understand that some women don't have men that are spiritually minded. I think everybody in this room is. Probably you're not married yet, but you will be one day. But you're spiritually minded already, you know. It might be some church leaders. It could be men and women Bible teachers. I don't think it has to be another man. It could be other women that you go to rather than your husband to ask for their kind of advice about things, and you're always going to them where so-and-so said, you know, she told me that, and blah, 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 blah. And the next thing you know, your husband just feels like he's second rate when it comes to your spiritual life. And you don't want him to be that. You want to, if I can say it this way to the women, you want to force him to be your spiritual leader. You want to mandate that, I want you to share with me. It could be relatives and friends. It could be your mother, right? Doesn't that happen a lot in marriages where the mother just doesn't want to let go of the daughter, and she's all the time trying to tell them how to run the family. Next thing you know, there's problems and all that kind of stuff. It's not good. So you got to be very careful, ladies, in seeking advice and counsel from other people without your husband's approval. I'm very fortunate that it's not a problem in our marriage. We don't, my wife and I, we're so close that it's just not a problem. I mean, I would be shocked if she went somewhere else to get advice without coming to me first, or vice versa, you know. And I think as a wife, you should ask your husband your spiritual questions and then give him the opportunity to answer them. You're going to ask me, well, what if he doesn't? Well, just keep pressing him. Keep asking him. He said, I want you to. I don't want to go to another man to answer my questions. You're my spiritual leader. You're the person God's given me. I look to you. I want you to lead me and help me.
I like how some of the translations in Ephesians 5:22 says, or wives, be subject to
22 or 33?
I'm looking at 22, but it says, wives, be subject to your own husbands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's helped my wife in times past. That's helped us because we had a pastor one time that he wanted to run the show in everybody's marriage and everybody to be subject to him. So I like how it says be subject to your own husband.
Right. I as a pastor, I want to build up the men in my church so that they're great husbands. I don't think I could have a better ministry than that.
Amen.
You know. Number 4 is by resisting his decisions in her spirit. By resisting his decisions in her spirit. Here's what you're going to find, ladies. You're going to find that your spirit controls your husband's ambitions. This is really big. This is really huge. This is super important. If you're all the time trying to control everything about him and control what he does and where he goes and everything else and what he wants to do, you're going to break his spirit. The whole process of marriage is one of decision making. And you have to learn how to make decisions together rather than just resisting decisions. If you go through Proverbs, you will find that it says 4 times that if a wife is contentious with her husband, if she contends with him about everything, if she argues about everything, no, I don't want to do it that way. If she does that, it mentions it 4 times that it drives her husband away. It drives him into the wilderness. It drives him to the roof, to the attic space. It drives him away from his wife for there to always be this argument, nope, there's a better way to do it, no, I disagree with that. Just contending all the time, just resisting his decisions. We make decisions all the time. We make decisions on where to live, what home to buy, what clothes to wear, where to go on vacation, where to work, what business to start, how many kids to have, how to spend our money, what car to buy, what church that we ought to take as a pastor, what to do this weekend, and on and on and on and on. And so ultimately we become what we decided. We're always a byproduct of our decisions. Every marriage is a byproduct of the decisions that the husband and wife made together. I just bought my wife a car, a nice car. I bought her a 2020 Explorer. It's got all of the bells and whistles on it, except for heated seats, right? And
You had one job, Gary.
I know it. We missed it. We thought they told us that it needed seats. But it was a large investment, you know. She had a 2001 Expedition that she's had forever, and just thought she needed a new car, and I've been looking for it for almost 3 or 4 years, and just never could find what I wanted, and I finally found one, and probably paid a little bit more than I wanted to pay. But we sat down, we looked at it, we evaluated it. I mean, we had the money, we could go pay cash. We just made a decision, and she loves the car. She looks really good in it too. But it wasn't. I would never have gotten it if she didn't want it. There've been plenty of times when I'd say, "Sweetheart, I want. It's time for me to get you a car," and she would say, "I don't need another car. I just don't need one." And so this time I took her to the car, and she says, "Yeah, I want that one too." I like that one. So
You got told no too many times, so to change your tactic?
well, I didn't argue with her. I mean, I didn't argue with her. She was a part of the decision-making process. She had other priorities sometimes, and she wasn't resisting my decision. She was just, we found a way to come to a nice resolution about it. Because our decisions, they shape us, they define us, and the more that a wife resists her husband's decisions, everybody listen, the more that a wife resists her husband's decisions, the less motivated he will be to love her. And one of the things I say in the marriage ceremonies that I do, is that the wife has got to give the husband the freedom to fail. She has to, because God teaches men more through failure than he does through success. He's got to have the freedom to fail in his life. If he makes a bad decision, okay, no problem, life goes on. We'll just adjust, we'll change the decision. He'll see it, he'll get it. I think the problem is that many women, not men included, but many women win the battle, but they lose the war. They lose the war. I remember doing marriage counseling with this lady that she and her husband were going to our church a good while back. This is probably 15 years, 10, 12, 15 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was. And they came to me for marriage counseling, and I didn't do anything because the woman would not stop criticizing her husband about everything. He could not say anything and I'm trying to calm her down and to facilitate. Let's have a discussion. Let him say what he wants to say, and then you've got to calm down here. And she never did it. She never wanted to. And I'm thinking, if you're no better than that at home than you are in this marriage session, I'm surprised that he stayed with you as long as he has. Because she resisted everything that he had to say. Just completely Just complete disrespect. Eventually, if you keep disagreeing with your husband's decisions, he'll not want to give you any input. He'll just go out and do what he wants to do. He'll do it the way he wants to do, and that's not what you want. And so Proverbs is very clear about a wife being contentious. I'm going to read those 4 verses to you, so just listen. You don't have to go to them. Proverbs 21:9, better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Now, there's plenty of things it says about men too, but I'm just reading for the women, and how a contentious woman's spirit controls her husband or motivates him in positively or negatively. Proverbs 21:19, better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. Proverbs 25:24, it's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Proverbs 27:15, a continual dripping on a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. God doesn't have anything really good to say about a woman that's always contending and arguing and debating about every little thing, and if we spent too much on this or that, and I just don't see that there's a lot of room in Scripture for that to happen in a good marriage. It's just not there. If you can find it somewhere else in the Scriptures, you let me know, and I'll change my notes. But every verse that I read to you, except the last one, says that the more a wife contends with her husband, the less he wants to have to do with her, and the further he wants to get away from her. Now, after over 40, nearly 45 years probably, of doing marriage counseling, all I can say is I've seen that, my wife and I have seen that over and over and over and over and over again. I'm not blaming everything on the woman. Every marriage is two-sided. I know that. But you can contend and argue and get what you want, and in the process you lose what you actually need. You lose what God wants to do in your husband and how He wants to build him up and strengthen him to be your protector and the person that loves you more than anybody else on the planet. And you can't get there by contending with him about every little thing that comes up. No, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not going to do my children that way. Now, I know women that are like that. I know men that are like that too, so.
I'm laughing at these two exchanging looks right now. Sorry. I wasn't laughing at you.
Every husband looks and every wife looks at each other doing these things, so.
I was looking at the clock.
Yeah.
And then I looked down at her and said, I mouthed, I love you to her.
Yeah. So here's what happens. Here's what contentions do, all right? Contentions destroy intimacy. Contentions destroy intimacy in a marriage. And intimacy is so vital to a marriage and to its success. Nobody wants to be in a marriage where there's no intimacy. I mean oneness, intimacy, closeness, physically, emotionally, intellectually. And I would say that contending destroys intimacy to the point that the wife can be assured that the husband, it removes his desire for having lovemaking in the process. If the wife's always barking at him and yelling and contending about this, and well, you just spent too much money on Saturday down at Lowe's, I doubt he's going to want to make love with you that night. I'm just talking out loud here. We're adults. He would rather be in the attic than in the bed with a contentious woman. Did somebody say something?
Yeah, and based on what we talked about last week, and just the
differences.
I guess the differences in the channels of how men versus women channel that, I guess, attraction for intimacy, like, is going to be a compounding avalanche rolling down the hill type scenario. Because if he's not wanting to be around her because of that convention, she's not gonna feel that emotional support from him to feel that attraction back, and it's just gonna compound and keep piling up
Sure.
over time.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happens. I think the compounding effect works both ways, right? So it's a double compounding effect, which makes it even worse. It speeds the process up.
Yeah.
You know, people get married, people get divorced, the highest rates of divorce, I think, occur in year 3 or year 5 is one of those two. Or year 25.
Made it.
Or year 25, when all the kids are gone.
I'll let you know.
25, you said that's the next one. 5 to 25, that's a big separation.
Well,
of
that's
years
because
there.
all the kids are grown and gone.
And then you're left with each
And
other.
it's just the two of you, you don't know how to talk.
Ah.
You don't know how to get along. So you
So
just
you're
sit around
saying we
looking.
need grandkids right out the gate.
Well, I have grandkids, and there's still plenty of time where it's just you two.
That's right.
Plenty of time it's just you two. And, yeah. Yep.
So a husband would rather be in the attic than in the bed with a contentious woman. And so I think the key for the wife for resolving differences that she may have with her husband is learning how to make a godly appeal. If you disagree, just make an appeal. There are plenty of examples of that in the Old Testament, of how women appeal to their husbands. What was the lady that her husband was real fat? What was her name?
The one that married David?
Yep. Was it Abigail? Yeah, and she came and she made an appeal to her husband, you know. He was going to do some really bad things, and she just made a godly appeal to him. Need number 2. Need number 2, a husband needs a wife who accepts him as a leader and believes in his God-given role and responsibilities. Men, you have a role and responsibility in your family to be a godly leader. You're the head of your family. Your wife's not inferior to you. She's equal to you, but you have a role, and your role is different, and your role is to be the godly leader in that family. And it's a fact, I have to say this, it's a fact, we all know this, that there are a lot of men that aren't godly leaders in their homes, period. They don't really qualify to be a good husband because they're not a godly leader. They don't know how to be a godly leader.
So the younger your congregation is nowadays, the more opposition you're going to come up against to these principles. Because everything in the culture nowadays is absolutely counter, like you said earlier, to what you're talking about now. So if the Lord puts you in a church with a younger congregation, you're more likely to deal with these principles on a I won't say a daily basis, but when somebody has a problem, that's what you're really going to be dealing with.
I think there's a lot of accuracy to that, Alex. I do. I think that older people have already worked through a lot of this, you know. Younger couples get into debt quickly. They buy a nice big house that costs more. They both got nice cars that cost more. They have children. Gets expensive. They go to private schools. It just goes on and on and on and on. And they get into debt. They don't know how to handle it. It creates tension in the marriage. It creates arguments that a lot of the older people just, you couldn't get a loan back then, you know. I mean, that's all your wife does is make loans every day for young couples to buy houses. I mean, we're not talking about cheap houses. We're talking about expensive houses, you know, $250,000 and $400,000 and all that kind of nonsense.
Well, it seems like these principles that you're listing are what the world tells women today that they should not be.
New family.
The culture has, there's a council, we call it the cancel culture. And the cancel culture cancels out all of biblical principles as being nonsense. The idea of a man having leadership, a role of leadership over the woman is just nonsense to most women today, especially in the, what's the generation they call them now, the
X.
millennial
Gen Z.
generation, you know, the
Gen Z
millennials.
now.
Huh?
Gen Z.
Is it Gen Z now? It just
Yeah.
keeps changing.
They just keep on-
I mean, we don't even know, but I mean, people don't even know if they're a man or a woman. I mean, honestly,
Mhm.
honestly, that is so bizarre that it's just, it's insanity. You know, we've gone insane, and then we have a government that supports all of that. And promotes it actually, you know, just so they can get votes and stay in office and make more money and all that kind of stuff. So, but here's what the wife needs to do. Let's just say that a wife, and I'm not talking to any of the wives here, but let's just say that a wife has a husband, and you're doing counseling with the wife. You and your wife are counseling with this lady, and she tells you, she says, well, he's not a spiritual leader. He's just not a spiritual leader in our family. He doesn't read the Bible, he doesn't pray, he doesn't do anything, he doesn't want to go to church, blah, blah, blah. What you need to do is to reaffirm to him personally what God has called him to be. Just reaffirm, this is what God's called you to be. I'm going to yield my life to you because God has called you to be the head of this family and to be my spiritual mate and my spiritual leader in my family. And you just constantly reaffirm that to him until he finally figures out that that's what God's called him to do. Will everybody respond positively? Nope. But it's the best place to start, is to tell somebody what God's called them to be in a gracious way. And I think that what you'll find is that affirmation is the exact reinforcement that he really needs to become what God wants him to be. If he has any kind of spiritual life or any kind of spiritual integrity to his life, that he will begin to hear what the wife says. Now you can nag him about it and he will never hear you, or you can just reinforce to him, hey, I love you, you're the one that God's given me to lead me and to help me and to strengthen me, and I want to follow. And that doesn't fit well in our culture. It just doesn't fit well. It doesn't sound right.
Well, I mean, there's a concept I use in leadership called a compliment sandwich.
The what?
A compliment sandwich.
Compliment sandwich.
Yes, whenever you're giving constructive criticism,
Mm-hmm.
compliment, critique, compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, I love you, you address the problem, and I guess in that, how you just laid it out, the compliment would be, I want this to be the outcome.
All right, I like that compliment sandwich. I may have to use that sometime.
By all means, I'm sure plenty of other people in here have heard it too. Like I said, it's been very effective when it has come to having to reprimand subordinates. Is you give that compliment. I mean, I do it with my teens now. I love you. We gotta talk about something. And it's going to, I love you. Once we get past this, we'll see what happens next.
Okay.
And like I said, it helps, I guess for lack of a better term, soften the blow of the critique that's coming.
No, that's wise. It's good. It's good. It's good. I like that. I can remember compliment sandwich. I was struggling a little bit to see what it was, but
I like the kiss method.
yeah, but I like it. But I like it. I like it. So, I think a wife should reassure her husband that she has confidence that God is working through him. My wife does that all the time for me. I mean, she does it constantly. I want to give you 3 principles under this one, under need 2, that a wife needs to understand. Number 1, most women do not understand this principle, but God works through a man's decisions, whether they're right or wrong. He works through a man's decisions, whether they're right or wrong. If they're wrong, he's going to deal with it. And he's going to deal with the individual so that he can make good decisions in the future.
Can you say that again?
Right.
I'm sorry.
God works through a man's decisions, whether they are right or wrong. Number 2, what a husband's bad decision does is to reveal specific needs in his life, and thus allows the wife to be used by God in providing the help and the support he needs. Makes a bad decision, and rather than, well, I told you so, she says, hey, we'll work through this. It's no problem. This is no big deal. We can get out of this. Yeah, it wasn't a really good decision, but hey, I'm okay. We're okay. Life goes on. And when she does this, I think it greatly strengthens the marriage relationship. In fact, she will find that the more encouragement that she is to her husband when he fails, the more he will love you. Is he going to fail? Yes. Yes, we'll say a hearty yes. He's going to fail, especially he'll fail in the ministry, he'll fail in life, he'll make bad decisions, and the more that you encourage him through all of that, when he does fail, the more he will love you. You know, I think that loyalty can only be demonstrated when you're going through adversity, right? When you're really going through adversity, that's when you really do make bad decisions. Every husband's going to make bad decisions. I made plenty of them. I'm not going to tell you about the worst decision I ever made. I'll tell you in the short form. We went out one day to buy a vacuum cleaner. This is when we were in college at Clemson. And we came home with a Vega, which was an automobile, which was the worst car that has ever been made. It had an aluminum block. It blew up at about 50,000 to 60,000 miles. I cannot believe. And my wife had a nice Mustang, and I sold it for a Vega.
Can we just say for everybody on camera how big your wife's smile has been through this whole story? I was going to point that out. Throwing it out.
We've never bought a bad car since. So.
You learned.
You learned, yeah.
I buy my own vacuum cleaner.
Wait, are you allowed to go vacuum cleaner shopping now? That's the question. No.
Yeah.
We all have our version of the Vegas story.
Yeah, I've got more than one Vegas story.
I do too.
That's just one,
I do, trust me, I do too.
but it's one I'll never forget. And so, number 3, this is not need 3, but this part of this. A wife will find that the more she trusts her husband, the more careful he will be in giving her direction. In other words, if you trust him and you just, you say, okay, I trust that decision, he's going to be wanting to get more of your input when you trust him. I think my wife really trusts me. I'm just going to say, I know that she really trusts me. But I want to say this to you, is I don't want to make any decisions without her. Understand? If I had to just jump in there and make a decision. There was a time, how long ago was it? 2-3 months ago, I had to make a decision about something that was happening at some rental property that we had. And it was a really, really hard decision that I had to make, and everybody kind of disagreed with me about it. And it was just hard, it was really difficult. And I just said, I made the decision that this is what we're going to do, this is what we have to do. I can't tell you all the details, it was just not, it wouldn't be pleasant. I mean, it wasn't anything between me and my wife, but it was just some hard decisions that I had to make, because it involved a lot of money. Chris, you know all about having a house that you gotta fix up. And when something breaks and you start tearing things out, everything looks worse than what you thought it was before you started tearing it out. So anyway, I just, there were other people involved, and I said, no, we're not doing what everybody wants to do. And everybody said, well, I think you're wrong. And to this day, they may still think that I'm wrong, but my wife didn't contend with me about it. She still trusted me to make that decision and didn't argue, and we moved on. And so most often a man's goals involve some kind of long-term achievement, whereas a woman's needs usually involve more immediate projects. And women just have different priorities than men have. They have different priorities in their life.
Immediate.
Well,
That was a good word that you used there.
well, I gotta tell you this, just for your benefit, Alex, is that one year, my children gave me a t-shirt, and on the t-shirt it says, if a man tells you he's going to do something, how does it go?
You don't have to remind them.
You don't have to remind him every 6 months. So, you know, I tell everybody, if my wife wants me to do something, I have 6 months to get it done. I have a lot going on. You can't just jump in there and and go out and do everything that needs to be done. I don't have the time. I just don't have the time. And my priority.
You could knock it out first, and
Huh?
then it's done.
You what?
You could knock it out first, then it's done. It's off everybody's list. Just knock it out. Low-hanging fruit.
Get her, Gary. Get her.
That look!
Okay, just knock it
Glad I'm
out.
on this side of the room.
Okay, just knock it out. Yeah. Things that take days to knock out just don't get knocked out in my house. So my wife and I discussed something the other day. So well, let's. We decided we had a number of issues that we wanted to take care of in our home that we felt like we needed to, and we decided, hey, we'll go out and we'll find somebody to do all of this for us rather than me doing it, because I don't have the energy anymore. I don't. I mean, some days I'm sick. Some days I don't feel good, and but I know my wife wants to get it done, and so we'll go get it done. It'll work out fine. So if a wife has different priorities than a man, she has to exercise patience during times of pressure. I think the wife should learn to accept difficult circumstances without giving God or her husband a deadline to remove them. Let God be at work in the man's life. You always want to see God working in the man's life if you're a wife. Need number 3. Now, I have really gotten into trouble on this one. I'm just telling you. I've had women, I'm going to say things, and I've had women tell me, no, never that, never that. And that's okay. It's okay with me, as long as the husband's okay. Need 3, a husband needs a wife who will continue to develop both inward and outward beauty. That ought to be obvious, right? I want to talk about personal appearance. I think a wife ought to spend some extra time on her personal appearance.
She does, that's why we're late all the time.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And she needs to discover and ask what it is that her husband likes regarding her appearance, and then try to conform to that as much as possible. I prefer that my wife not cut her hair. If she decided she was, it wouldn't impact me at all. I love her when she has long hair. I love her when she pulls it back a certain way. I like that the best. But if she just never did that again, I'm not going to complain about it. I would just say, I miss that or something like that. But I want her to look nice everywhere we go. I want to look nice wherever we go. I don't want to look like a bum when I'm out there with somebody. I like choosing most of my wife's outfits. Chris's wife Tracy would never let him pick out an outfit, you know. But I probably pick out 90% of my wife's clothes. Wouldn't you agree? And she'll go try it on, and we'll say, well, we like that or we don't like that. Y'all been with us when we bought clothes and we go to Dillard's, and
Yeah.
y'all helped me convince her to get that one dress that was so really nice, and she didn't want to go. She said it's too expensive, and I said, no, we can afford it, and we got it, and she just looks gorgeous in it, actually, gorgeous, baby, just gorgeous. I love choosing my wife's outfits, and so the wife ought to know how to dress to please her husband. And my wife comes to me all the time and says, how does this look on me? Even clothes that we've already bought for her, you know, does this hang right? Does this look right? I don't want them too tight, all that kind of stuff. And I know that, but I think that the wife ought to dress to please her husband. See, I'm getting in trouble here with the women that are listening to this because they don't think that's accurate. But I know that we can't stop the aging process, but a godly wife should take as much pains as she can to dress in a way that made her husband love her to begin with. You know, to dress in a way that's attractive to her, that my wife never, when we first met, she never wore, you know, certain kind of clothes. She always, when I'd come home on the weekends from school, she always looked great. She'd be getting off of work, I'd meet her at work, and I'd follow her home and stuff, and she just always looked great. She knew it was coming, and I think there are a couple of reasons why men need wives to be attractive. The first one is that if the wife does not look good, her husband is not going to look much, right? If you don't look,
for the single guy to agree, so he doesn't get in trouble.
do what?
So you're looking for the single guy to agree, so he doesn't get in trouble.
Well, it's true. It's true. I see some women walking into Walmart with their pajamas on, and I'm just thinking, nope.
I did that the other way, Carrie.
Huh?
I did that the other way.
Nope.
But we did it together, didn't we?
You went with pajamas on?
Because we.
So what you're saying is a new philosophy is a couple that goes to Walmart in their pajamas together.
Yeah.
They have to into
But it didn't bother you.
True.
And if it didn't bother you, I'll say it's okay.
So it was emergency that.
Yeah, I forgot to buy the milk for Chase.
Yeah, and we were.
And we had already.
We didn't even want to do this, but we had to
in
do
my
it.
pajamas, and I was like.
It's Walmart, you know. You can wear your pajamas in Walmart, but we don't do it often.
Nobody even
Yeah.
judged us at all.
Yeah.
I've been
That you know of.
I've been down to the store by myself,
You know, the most cutest
so
pajamas.
she didn't have to get out.
We didn't have our slippers on. We see that.
Well, when a husband does look, he's not going to be very excited at what he sees. It's just not. I know men, you men know men, and men are much more visually stimulated than women. I think God made them that way, and it takes a great deal of personal discipline for a man to guard his thought life when there are attractive women around, even on just watching something on TV or whatever it may be, you know. There's just some things I can't watch, not gonna watch, don't want to watch.
Amen.
A husband is stimulated, because a husband is visually stimulated, the wife needs to make sure that she's the one that's doing the stimulating, right? I don't need another woman. My wife stimulates me every day. We hug, we kiss, we caress, we smooch, we're old people. And it's just, nothing is lessened. We are just aggressively affectionate to one another. I think men commonly express much more enthusiasm for their wives when they see them as being attractive rather than when they are unattractive. And it's easy to get into a habit of not being attractive. My wife has cleaning days, right? Cleaning days, she has a certain set of clothes that she wears. And when she puts those clothes on, I go into my study and shut the door. I get out of the way. I know what's coming. You know, the clothes are not that attractive on her. But she does such a great job of cleaning that I don't want to get in the way of that either, you know. And I don't say anything about it because she's attractive to me no matter how she looks. But they're not, everybody, all men are not like this, especially if you're doing marriage counseling and you got young couples and that this is marriage counseling for young couples, you know. She needs to, if your husband doesn't say much, it might be because he doesn't see you as being attractive. How often honey, just from a personal testimony, how many times a day do I tell you things like, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're amazing, you are just incredible? How many times a day do I do that? A lot. It goes on all day. I'll talk about it all the way home. We'll be driving and maybe a slow time in the conversation and quiet, and I'll just look over and I'll say, you're just beautiful. You're gorgeous, sweetheart.
Do I ever say that?
Yes, yes.
How many times a day?
That little giggle is what did it for me. His little giggle is what set it off.
Well.
It's because I'm copying him, but it's.
Well, you have to understand. You have to understand that the divorce rate's about 50%, and it's that high in the church. And people get attracted to other things and other people for a lot of different reasons. And you want to do everything you can to make sure that doesn't happen in your life. Number two, I think it's just a simple matter of pride. I know that sounds pretty unspiritual, but it's very real in men. When a man takes his wife somewhere, he wants her to look good. I want my wife to look great. I don't mind waiting on her to get ready. I don't mind at all. I want her to look good. I want to make sure that she has clothes that fit her well, that look good on her, that make her look good. And sometimes when I see these women in public that look like they just got out of bed, some of them they're wearing these outfits that show every ripple in their body, I feel embarrassed for their husbands. Of course, they look the same way, half of them. If you doubt men feel this way, then simply read the Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
Just read the Song of Solomon to see how much Solomon compliments his wife on her physical characteristics.
Well, David and Bathsheba, all it took was the look.
Yep, it was. I want to give you 4 elements of physical attractiveness that every wife should consider. I will get in trouble here. So please forgive me. I get in trouble every time that I talk about this, and it's okay. I'm okay with that. The first is weight control. We all change physically as we get older. I'm losing weight. I've gone from almost 175, 174 something down to 157. I've lost that much weight here in past several months, couple months. There are a lot of things I don't feel like eating, but I feel better. I mean, I used to feel a little bit overweight. Now I don't feel overweight. You know, I'm not big, I'm not strong, I'm not muscular. I never have been, never will be. But it's inevitable that we change as we get older. Our metabolism slows down as we age. We're less active. The wife has children, right? That's not something easy to get over. I mean, if you have 3 or 4 kids, if a woman has 3 or 4 kids, and I don't know how these women that can have 4 or 5 kids and just stay real slim and trim, how all that works. Because there's a lot that goes on during birth. But most women and men have a tendency, both of them, to gain weight after they get married. Number 2, makeup. See, I'm in trouble already. I think the wife should wear makeup that's attractive to her husband, and that makeup that he thinks makes her look attractive without being gaudy. I'm going to make a statement to you in a minute that reinforces this for me personally. Solomon really wanted his wife to look great, and he told her how good that she actually looked. We'll read something about Solomon here in just a little bit. But most women wear makeup that they like, and they never ask their husband what he likes. I don't want to have to tell my wife someday that's gaudy. That looks gaudy on you. We were somewhere, I think it was this lady that's a receptionist over at the urologist upstairs. And she's an attractive lady, but she wears these eyelashes that come out about there. And I have trouble looking at her. I have trouble looking at her in the eye. You know, it's like, that looks so bizarre. You know, it just looks so bizarre. And she's married, she got 2 or 3 marriage rings on or something. I'm just thinking, if my wife walked out of the room like that, we'd walk right back into the room. And we'd take those things off. They're just too gaudy, you know. Here's what I think about makeup. So this is my final statement on it, so I can move on to the next place I get in trouble. I personally think that makeup should be discreet to the point that it's almost unnoticeable. It's almost unnoticeable. You're never going to see my wife. She's got as much makeup on tonight as she always does. It's unnoticeable. But she wears makeup. She wears lipstick, she does her eyes, puts powder on her face, but you can't really tell it, you know? And I think that's the way it ought to be. These are personal opinions. You can adjust them if you don't like what I'm saying. I won't be offended. Number 3 of the 4 elements of physical attractiveness, hairstyle. The Bible says that a woman's hair is a glory to her, 1 Corinthians 11:15. So I think that a woman's hairstyle ought to reflect, in some ways, it ought to reflect what her husband really wants it to look like. I like my wife having long hair. My daughter has longer hair. Her hair goes way down here. It looks great on her. It just looks beautiful on her, actually. It's very long. She looks great with long hair. But I don't, you shouldn't get a hairstyle that your hairdresser or your best friend likes, but your husband doesn't like. I think you should wear your hair within reason. My wife doesn't like for me to get my hair cut short too often, so I'm probably a hypocrite when it comes to this, because when it gets hot, I cut my hair. Not like James, but
Well, my wife's in trouble then.
Huh?
She's in trouble if she's like that.
Yeah. Well, she thinks I want to look like that sometimes, I think, but I want my wife's hair to appeal to me. Why? Somebody tell me why. I just gave you the answer.
Because you wanna look at her.
Well, because God says it's a glory to her. It's something that He's given her that makes her distinctly different from the man, or should, I think. And I think your husband is the one that you're dressing for, and you don't need to look attractive for other women. I don't mind it. I want my wife to be attractive, period, but I don't want her to do it just because she thinks other women will think she's attractive. Number 4, your clothes. I think a wife's clothes should be modest. I believe that. I'll always believe that. It doesn't matter what size a wife wears. She can find clothes that will flatter her in some way. There are a lot of women, I think, that dress less attractively once they get married than when they first got married, but men care a great deal about having an attractive wife. They do. They do. Men are turned on more by what they see physically than probably any other factor. I'm not saying that a wife has to look like a fashion model, but she should at least take some time to be attractive. And then another area, not the need. I'm going to finish the need here, and then we'll start with the needs of a wife. But the home, I want to talk about the home, and then we'll get to need 4. I think a man's message is determined by what happens in his home. That's where convictions are built in the family. That's where character is built in the family. It's where it's formed. It's in the home. It's the wife's spirit that sets that in the home. That's why we all have that sign in our house that says, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? It all starts in the home. And I think the wife is the key to that. My wife is much better with the children than I am. I love them just as much, but if they get sick, I mean, my kids are all grown, but the grandkids get sick, they don't want the granddaddy to take care of them, they want me, mom, to take care of them. So that's where she fits the best. And her spirit sets the tone and the mood for the home environment. Number 4, need number 4. I got two more needs. They're short. A husband needs time to be alone. I want to say it in a different way. A husband needs time to be alone with God. He needs time to be alone with God. A man has been made to have fellowship with God first. So it's very important that a wife understand that her husband's overall success is basically, it's directly related to his ability to seek God. I get up in the mornings, I have my time with the Lord, I have my fellowship with the Lord. My wife never interrupts me, ever. I go in the living room, I sit down in my chair. Even if she gets up, she gets a cup of coffee, she comes over there, she sits down, she gets her Bible, we read, we don't. I might get up and go hug her and stuff, but I sit back down and read, and she reads, and we have our time alone with God. And I want to say it this way, I think this is the right way to say it, is that the richer a man's fellowship with God, the sweeter will be his fellowship with his wife. The richer a man's fellowship with God, the sweeter is going to be his fellowship with his wife. You can mark this down, but when a man is out of fellowship with God, you can be assured that he's going to be out of fellowship with his wife and his children. He'll be an angry individual, a difficult person to live with. So let him have his time alone. Don't try to interrupt that when he's having it. Some men, not all men, I don't have this need, but there are a lot of men that have a need to just be with other men at times. It's a recreational thing. Go play golf, whatever, those kind of things. I'm way past that. I'm way past that. There was a time in my life where I wanted to do that, but I don't have any desire for that anymore. Number 5, need number 5. A husband needs a wife who is grateful for all that he has done and is doing for her life. So I'm going to get in trouble here all the time because the wife's going to say, well, he's not doing anything for me. He's not doing anything. He's not taking care of this. He's not doing that. He's not doing all the honeydews and blah, 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 blah. So the more expectations that you have of your husband, the more criticisms you're going to have of him when they don't get fulfilled, and the less that the husband, the more discouraged that the husband is going to become. You have to be really careful about expressing your disappointments with your expectations of what your husband does. I think it works both ways. And when that happens, when he becomes discouraged, what the wife will find is that everybody listen, her expectations will destroy her gratefulness. I'll say that again. Her expectations will destroy her gratefulness. She'll just learn not to be grateful. Well, he's not doing what I want him to do. And being grateful is a basic component for being happy, and a happy wife is a crown to her husband, right? So rather than just expressing your ungratefulness for everything that he didn't get done that you wanted him to do, find ways to express gratefulness for everything that he is doing for you. Providing for the family, whatever it may be, helping you in any way that he can. I help my wife as much as I can. I carry in all the groceries for her. I open my door for my wife all the time. I buckle her up in the car, in the truck. I don't want her doing anything that I can do for her. If I can do it for her, I want to do it for her. I want her to know that I love her and that I'm there. I'm going to be there. Every time, it's kind of funny, we'll go somewhere and we'll be in the parking lot and I'll walk around. We'll go. She drives for me most of the time. I don't see Will at night, and on days that I don't feel good, I can get dizzy, and so she drives for me. And but she's been driving for a long time. And tonight, when we get into the truck to go home, I'll put everything in the back of the truck, and then I'll open the door for her, and I'll help her get in the truck. And then when she gets in the truck, I'm going to buckle her in. Don't I do that all the time, baby?
Yes, you do.
When we get home, what do I tell you to do?
Stay here where you are.
To stay right where you are. I'm coming to get you.
Mm-hmm.
And I go around and I open the door and I unbuckle her and I help her out. Is that necessary? Not really. Does it work? It does. It really works. Because my wife knows how grateful I am for what she means to me. by just doing the little things. The little things are what matter the most, I think. An unhappy and an ungrateful wife is a public rebuke to her husband. It would be really, 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 really difficult for me if every Sunday that I went to church that my wife was grumpy and complaining about this and that she was critical of everybody that was there. It would just be awful. It would just be awful if I went to church with a wife that was just unpleasant and ungrateful. I think just for men, especially men in the ministry, you have to be a little bit careful because you'll find, I think it's a fact, that you'll find that men are attracted to grateful women and women who are gracious and express gratitude. There may be women that are you have to watch out for that you don't get attracted to them because they'll say something like, "Man, you're the best Bible teacher I ever heard in my life," or "We just love you so much," or "We're just so grateful for this or that." I'm not saying that those are things people can't tell you, but you got to be careful that you know how to deal with all of that. Because the gratitude because if you're in a home situation where you don't get that gratitude and that expressions of gratefulness from your wife, then you're going to be attracted to it when somebody else provides it for you. So I think if you build your wife up, that your wife will build you up, and vice versa. And that's the way that it should work. All right, any questions on all of those very, very controversial subjects that nobody...
So would you say that your wife can make or break your ministry?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe not by outwardly affecting it on a physical plane, but mentally in your home life, destroy your ministry or your ability to properly minister and shepherd other people in your course of your ministry.
If for some reason my wife, and we don't have bad weeks at home, we just don't have them. I mean, we just don't have them. But if we had a really bad week at home between each of us, or we'd argued or something, which we don't really do, I'd have a bad week in the pulpit. I can just tell you. I can just tell you, it affects me that bad. My emotions are tied to my wife. They're tied to my love for her and our ability to get along together with one another. They're tied together. And so I think that the biggest ministry that any of us as men have is to our wives. I think you have to work on your wife, your relationship with your wife, more than any other relationship that you have in life, period. I mean, that supersedes your church, it supersedes your children, it supersedes your friends, it supersedes your workplace, it supersedes everything, that she has to be the priority of your life, second only to the Lord Jesus Christ. You won't be disappointed in the end. You just will not be disappointed. You'll be disappointed if you don't. And that's why this whole message is about loving your wife like Christ loved the church. And it's really a message that's directed to the men, because you're the one that's in the ministry. And your wife is the reflection of what you think about God. Your wife is going to be, how you treat her is going to be a reflection of how you treat your church.
She's the crown jewel of your ministry. Right?
She is. I've known some pastors I felt so sorry for. I felt so sorry for them. Their wife would come into church and the wife just was rude, indifferent, didn't speak the people, just ignored them, those kind of things. It's just different. So,
Can I ask you one more question?
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
And it's something that I deal with in my personal life, not with my family that I live with, but my extended family. I have found that I am the spiritual head for my entire family, even the older people in my family that I feel like should be people that I look to for spiritual guidance. It's just non-existent. And I'm trying to talk to my parents, both of them, about their need for Christ.
Mhm.
And it puts me in a weird spot. You know, I always say that the hardest people to witness to are the people in your family, people closest to you.
Sure.
I just don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to handle, I'm trying to talk to my mother and my stepfather about how they need to go to church because I've got a younger brother, and he's full grown, but they are he's lost because they are both lost. I don't care what either one of them say. There's no church attendance. You know, my mom is spiritual. You know, and my dad is just kind of, I don't know, he's indifferent. Like he was made to go to church growing up, and then when he got old enough to not go back to church, he just went to church, and he's satisfied with that. But I'm not satisfied with that because my kids look to him both, you know, and I feel like I'm trying to overcome a generational curse, if you could call it that, or a gap of spiritual strength and stability in my family that's not there. You know, it's like a skip a whole generation, and then here I am picking it up. I just really not handle that. I think it affects me deeper, subconsciously more than it does, you know, outright. It's just, I don't know how you advise somebody to handle that. I mean,
You know, I'd have to think about how to answer that question because there's no simple, we'll go do this and everything will work out great for people that have already become a little bit fixed in their beliefs and their ways and everything. I would say to you on the good side of it is that all of my family have died. The grandparents, the parents, I never had any grandparents, really. All of my wife's grandparents, her parents are gone. I'm the patriarch in the family. I'm the patriarch of our family, of the whole family, everybody. And my children, my daughter, she says to me, she says, Daddy, she says, you're our rock. You're our rock. And I say that because everything kind of comes around. It comes around if you just keep doing what God wants you to do and living the way that God wants you to live. I realized a long time ago, Alex, you've heard me say it many times, you've been in many classes, so I'm not telling you anything new. I can't change anybody. I can impact their life, I can influence them, but I can't change them. Only God can change them. And so I want my life to be impactful every day. Every day. To me, every day matters. Every day, every conversation matters. Every person that I meet, it matters to me that I have something beneficial and encouraging to say to them in some way. And that I don't discredit anybody. I don't discredit my children, my grandchildren, anybody in my family, any friends I have, anybody that I just meet at Walmart. I don't discredit them in any way. I place value on them and I give them value. And I think it's that kind of mentality that you carry with you, where you help people to see themselves the way that God wants to see them. That's how you sort of work through that person that is sort of dead. Just dead to what you're trying to do in their life. I mean, what you're trying to say in their life is that they see your life more than they listen to your words. Your life is your testimony. So the more consistent that you can be, the more gracious and tender you can be, the more appreciative they're going to be, and in the long term. I have to tell you this story, then we'll close. We had a couple in our church whose mother had smoked all her life, and she was dying of lung cancer. And they brought her down to South Carolina to live with her, and they had witnessed to her and witnessed to her and witnessed to her for her whole life, really. And she just blew them off. She just said, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian." She wasn't a Christian. And I kept telling this couple, I told the lady, the daughter, I said, "I really believe that the Lord wants me to come and talk to your mom." And she wasn't opposed to that at all. She wanted me to do that, actually. And so we waited to what we thought was the right timing, and my wife and I went over there and walked into the room and sat down with her. We weren't in there, 15 minutes? I just opened my heart up to her very gently and graciously. And I shared the Lord Jesus with her, and she came to Christ that moment, that night. Her sister was outside, the kids were upstairs, the grandkids. The lady's crying, she's weeping. She says, "I know I haven't lived right, blah, blah, blah." She goes through all of that, and about 2 weeks later I did her funeral. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the husband and the wife had lived out their life before her, not me. She'd never met me before. That the wife and the husband had lived out, her daughter and her son-in-law had lived out their life in a way that was godly, always loved on her, always kind of encouraged her, didn't push her, just kept loving on her. And when that moment came, I just happened to be the person that God used to actually bring her to Christ. But I shouldn't get any credit. I think that Casey and Eric should get the credit for the way that they loved her when she was unlovable and didn't even want to listen to them. So just be faithful to what God's called you to do, and let you plant, you water, and then let God give the increase. Okay? Okay, James, you want to close for us?
Yes. Father, we love you and praise you, and thank you so much for everything that you have done for us and that you're doing for us, Lord. We thank you for our spouses, and we pray that you would help us to love them and to lay our lives down for them the way that you expect us to, the way Christ did for us. In Jesus' name, amen.